Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom or Tom. How's it going?
Tony, we are one day away from the most exciting game on the Ohio State football season, at least to date. It's Iowa week, Tony, and we all know what that means. Will there be points? No. Will there be excitement? Also, no. Will the Buckeyes win the game? Probably. But will it be fun? No.
Tom, I don't know if anybody ever told you, like, you should be a salesman or you should be a showman, or perhaps maybe just people say you should be a carny. Any of those things, I
And
think, would be a great job of selling what we're going to see on Saturday between Ohio State and Iowa when the Hawkeyes come to town for a 3:30 kick on CBS. And yeah, when we talk to the Ohio State coaches about Iowa, you could just say, like, everybody could just be like, Iowa's Iowa. It's like, okay, that's true. Okay. I don't need anything further. I've got everything I need. Iowa is Iowa. And that starts with Iowa's defense and how they're going to handle the Ohio State offense. And that's where both sides, that's where the points are going to come from. I think, like, Iowa forcing turnovers and giving the Hawkeyes a short field, because I don't see too many drives down the field for Iowa. But conversely, how many drives do we expect to see from Ohio State down the field? If they get the ball, they have like 11 possessions in this game. Do you see more than half of those going 65, 75, 85 yards in this game?
No, I don't think so. You were talking there, and I was reminded of the Wisconsin song. When you say Wisconsin, you've said it all, and that's like a complimentary thing. When you say Iowa, you've said it all. Brackets derogatory. It's just it is. This is what they are. This is their entire identity. They have found a way to make joyless football gruel that results in exactly 8 to 9 wins every season, and that's kind of the Kirk Ferentz thing. And Kirk Ferentz's defense of everything that he does and doesn't do is always, well, we won the game. And yeah, they did. And historically, you look at Iowa football outside of, the golden age of Hayden Fry, it has really just not been very good. And this is just kind of how you have to win the game in Iowa. Barry Alvarez found his formula at Wisconsin. Hayden Fry and now Kirk Ferentz have kind of found their formula in Iowa City. And it is what it is. But yeah, I'm not expecting, if this is a 10, 11 possession game, I'm not expecting Ohio State to have more than 4 drives, maybe 5, maybe of 40 or 50 yards. Just feels like you've got to be able to execute so consistently and not make a mistake and not make a bad throw and not have a drop and not have someone miss a block. You have to just be so consistent. That's just very hard to do. And Ohio State's more prepared to do that than most teams on Iowa's schedule, but it's still not going to be easy, and it's not going to be a lot of fun.
No, and I think with the passing game that Ohio State has, this isn't the same Iowa defense in terms of the personnel, but it is the same in terms of scheme and just keeping stuff in front of you and not necessarily being too over aggressive, just not giving up big plays. And they haven't given up big plays. They are one of just a few teams to not allow any pass plays of 30 yards or more, and have only given up a couple of no runs of 20 yards this season, same as Ohio State. But they you've seen Iowa State and Minnesota both complete a good number of passes percentage-wise. Minnesota completed 60%, Iowa State 64. That would equate to 65 to 70% for Ohio State, I would think. But I am interested to see if does Iowa defend Ohio State differently than they did those teams. Iowa will play a basic nickel essentially, but they defend very well, and they can defend the run very well with it. But I am interested to see how well they tackle on the outside stuff with Ohio State. How well can Ohio State still do the RPO? This will be the best defense they've faced by far, the most disciplined defense they face. Ryan Day and Chip Kelly both said you can't scheme up, you can't out scheme Iowa. You just have to execute. So that to me is going to be the biggest thing. It's the offensive line allowing Will Howard to make throws, Will Howard making the correct decisions, and then also being accurate. And then the downfield blocking is almost like the surest bet of all of this, because that's where you got some one-on-ones and you can win with effort and things like that. But there's going to be so much going on as that ball is snapped that Iowa knows what they're doing. They always know what they're doing. Ohio State, Will Howard have been pretty good at doing what they're doing, but now this is going to be the stiffest test. And not that Iowa's going to do some wrinkles, I think, just because they have to. But this is going to be one where Ohio State just needs to do what they've been doing, but also they're going to be doing it against a much better defense. So they have to do what they've been doing, but do it better. And that's going to be the thing that I'm watching.
It feels like if Ohio State's going to have success and if Ohio State's going to move the ball on Iowa, they're more likely to be able to do it through the air than they are on the ground. Iowa, as you said, has not given up a 20-yard rush all season long. They're 54th in the country right now in yards per attempt allowed, 6.6 yards per attempt. So you can move the ball. They have given up 3 plays of 60 yards or more through the air. So they've had a couple busts this year, which is really kind of uncharacteristic for Iowa. That is generally not how they have played over the past. And only one of them came against, 2 of those came against non-power teams, so it's probably backups and that kind of stuff. But if you're giving up 6.6 yards per attempt, that's 1.1 yards per attempt more than Ohio State is. Ohio State's basically top 10. Iowa's kind of mid-pack in terms of FBS. So if Ohio State can stay on schedule, be efficient, don't have the bad throw, don't have the play where Will Howard gets hit as he's throwing, don't have a pass get deflected. If you can stay on schedule and you can be efficient and just sort of execute over and over and over again, you can drive the ball on Iowa and you can score. And I think, expecting Ohio State to score 30 points, I think is realistic. Expecting Ohio State to score 40 points, that feels like you probably need a defensive touchdown to get there. It's going to be a game where Iowa's going to try and slow things down, just choke the life out of the game, keep the clock moving, keep the chains moving very slowly, very gradually. It's just when I wrote our score predictions piece for Buckeye Huddle, I just talked about the fact you are not going to enjoy this game. You are just not going to enjoy this game. Like, go enjoy, soak up the sunshine, have fun in the tailgating lots. The game is just probably not going to be a lot of fun because you're thinking, Ohio State's going to throw for, run for an 85-yard touchdown again. And no, probably not.
Yeah, we'll get to our score predictions later. I feel like it's going to be a piecemeal type of offensive effort in terms of where those scores come from. You do have 2 of the top 5 defenses in terms of not allowing the available yards to them. Like Ohio State's number 2 in the nation, and Iowa's number 5 in the nation in terms of, they've got 75 yards that they can allow, and they only allow, 20 yards per drive or whatever. So it's not going to be easy. Iowa has not yet allowed a 100 yards rushing in the game. 89 yards against Iowa State was the best. They should have won that game. They gave it away and lost it. 2.4 yards per carry allowed. I would expect Ohio State to do better than that, but there are going to be, I think, plenty of 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10s in this one when they run on first down. So I'll also be interested to see how much they throw on first down. And now you're left with, maybe it's 2nd and 10 after an incompletion. So I think you're going to see a lot of 2nd and longs in this one. And we talk about how games are won on first down or third downs. This one might be won on second downs, just in terms of getting back on schedule or getting a first down with that second down. So that'll be interesting for me to watch. What kind of rushing attack are you expecting? Because we know that Will Howard's going to start running the ball more. Is this the one where he is more of a factor? And keep in mind, he's rushed for a touchdown in the last 3 games.
I think they would love to have him not have to carry the ball 12 times in this game because you got to remember what's on deck. And while Iowa's going to be pretty stingy with the number of points they allow, 24 points probably wins this game for Ohio State. It's not going to win it with any style points at all. But I don't, unless Ohio State turns the ball over and the Iowa defense scores, I don't see Iowa scoring more than 17, 20 points, something like that. So this is not one where you probably have to have Will Howard run a ton. And I'm sure Will Howard getting a helmet in the sternum last week probably made Ryan Day's blood run cold a little bit. So I think you're going to have to, they're probably going to be a little bit careful with him still this week. Next week, you got to go out to Eugene and win the game. So, and then you have a week off after that. So next week, if you're going to see 15 carries for Will Howard, it's going to be next week, not this week. But they're going to have to, you have to show it. You have to, there at least needs to be the threat there. And I think based on the fact that you've seen Will Howard run the ball and pull the ball and score with his legs, the threat is there. You probably have to show that a few times, but this is probably just a grind it out. The traditional view is you got to run to set up the pass. I think you may have to pass to set up the run a little bit here because Iowa is probably, what are you expecting Iowa to do with their safeties? Do they play their safeties back and just say, don't beat us deep? Or are they going to trust their front seven to control the run game? Can if they do, that feels like you're throwing a bunch of screens to wide receivers and, run the little tunnel screen to Jeremiah Smith, and it doesn't go for 70 yards this time, but it might go for 15 yards this time, something like that. That feels kind of like what I'm expecting Iowa to do on defense and how I'm expecting Ohio State maybe to respond.
Yeah, if they're going to put both safeties back, then I would expect Ohio State to continue to run the ball. I will say Iowa has not yet allowed a point in the first quarter. They've only allowed 6 in the fourth. So 49 of their 55 points allowed have come in the second and the third quarter. Ryan Day talks about the middle 8 being the last 4 minutes of the second quarter and the first 4 minutes of the third quarter. Buckeyes have done pretty well in there, and it looks like that's maybe a soft spot for Iowa. So that might be the one where that's where Ohio State scores, and it scores again and puts this one out of reach. It's a close game for 2 quarters, and then you get 14 or 10 points, and now it's like insurmountable because it's 24-7, something like that. And now you just kind of coast the rest of the way.
Well, and that's something we talked about on the Bold Prediction show yesterday, where I boldly brought up the fact that they'd given up 6 total points in the first and fourth quarters, and boldly, Tony, predicted Ohio State to score 17 points there. I had one on my list because I know you're always a coward and you're always so scared that oh, Tom, you're too bold. No, please, not like that. I did have one where the Buckeyes won the middle 8 by 10 points. Now, I didn't end up going with that, but it's something where if the Buckeyes win the toss, they're going to defer. You're going to give Iowa the ball to start the game. So if they are going to get the ball to start the third quarter and you can score before the half, that's it. If I was going to score 17 points in this game or 14 points in this game or 10 points in this game, whatever it is, if you can score twice, bracketed around halftime, that's probably, you're most of the way to what you need to win the game just right there in that 8-minute span. I'm sure that's going to be something the Buckeyes, especially if they are able to win the toss and defer in the first half, that's going to be something they are really looking at doing. They've been very aggressive in the minutes before halftime the last couple of weeks. They actually had 2 possessions in the middle 8 during the Michigan State game. The first one didn't go anywhere. And the second one, they went right down the field and scored. And that's something that Ryan Day has talked about. That's something they're looking at. I think that's going to be that could be the deciding period of time in this game.
Yeah, to me, that's, if it goes well for Ohio State, that will be all of the insurance that they need. And then you just milk that clock and then get to Oregon as quickly as possible. Let's move to the Iowa side of the ball. Let's talk about the Iowa offense. Brand new offensive coordinator, Tim Lester, former Western Michigan Bronco quarterback, fantastic college quarterback, now play calling for Iowa. I was on a Mark Rogers show with an Iowa writer and talking about Tim Lester, how Tim Lester said in interviews this week that he wanted to call more deep shots, but he was vetoed. And I thought that was interesting that your offensive coordinator is like, yeah, let's dial it up. Let's throw deep. And I'm assuming the head coach is like, no, we better not do that. And this week,
raisins on my oatmeal. In this economy, that's the Kirk Ferentz way right there.
So can Iowa afford not to throw the ball deep in this one, or with we talked about this on the bold prediction show as well. Cade McNamara and 2 games against Power 4 opponents, Iowa State and Minnesota, averaging 3.4 yards per pass attempt. And he's yet to throw for 100 yards in either of those games. Feels like you're not going to get it done on 3rd and 5 or whatever. You're just trying to little bits, dink and dunk because they don't have the weapon. So it almost feels like you're better off. Yes, you're going to be running the ball with Caleb Johnson as much as humanly possible, but you might want to do what Michigan State did and get those linebackers in conflict with the tight ends downfield and make some plays that way. Don't worry about your wide receivers necessarily. They're going to be dealing with pretty good corners. But we saw the linebackers get attacked in the passing game. That would seem to be a good way to operate in this one. Now, Tom, I'm not an analytics person. I'm not an EPA person like you are. Iowa's offense has a negative number. Their passing offense has a negative number with EPA. Is that bad?
EPA, in case you're wondering, stands for expected points added. So you can't score negative points on offense, but if you can score negative expected points, that's still pretty good. I think the Iowa passing attack is going to come down to what can Luke Lachey do, the tight end out of Grandview Heights, son of Ohio State color guy, Jim Lachey, of course. That feels like the Luke Lachey versus the Ohio State linebackers kind of matchup. That might be a place where they could make some hay. Throwing the ball downfield is not a terrible idea because we have seen Ohio State corners get a little grabby. Take a shot downfield, watch Davis and Igbinosun be physical, and maybe the official throws a flag. And if he can move 15 yards to fit down the field on a flag, you were going to take it if you're Iowa. So I think you have to do something. You can't just run the fullback dive 3 times into the line and then punt. You're not going to put up a ton of points. You're not even going to put up a ton of expected points doing that. That's kind of been their MO, is keep it simple. Caleb Johnson's had a great season. Caleb Johnson is moving up the Iowa all-time ranks. He's about to pass 2,000 yards rushing. I think he had need 70-something yards to do that on Saturday. He's an Ohio native, so I'm sure it would mean a lot to have him come back to Ohio State and do that. And Luke Lachey, obviously similar, an Ohio native, and I'm sure, so I think those 2 guys are kind of the 2 names to watch. I was looking, Luke Lachey was in the same tight end class as Joe Royer, and the Buckeyes decided Joe Royer was the better option. How'd that work out? Well, we were out of time. Let's instead talk about Caleb Johnson, because I went back, I was thinking, Caleb Johnson's had a really good career. Who did they pick over Caleb Johnson? Because he's an in-state guy. He was the 43rd running back in his class, number 18 player in the state of Ohio out of Hamilton High School and down by Cincinnati. What I was amazed, though, Tony, was he's been great. 43rd running back. Do you know who the 41st running back in that class was? He's a Big 12 running back of some esteem.
Dallin Hayden?
Dallin Hayden was higher than that. Dallin Hayden was the Ohio State running back
Ollie
in
Gordon?
that class. Ollie Gordon, 41st running back in the class. Do you know who the 46th running back in that class was? Someone who started his career with one SEC team and is now playing for another.
Is it? Oh, I was going to say Quinshon Judkins, but no. Tell me.
Trevor Etienne.
Well,
I mean, that was really interesting, because those are 3 guys from 41st to 46th in the country. None of them had a national ranking. And, the top of that list is, Nick Singleton, who's worked out great, but Emmanuel Henderson from Alabama, Raleek Brown from Southern Cal, Jamarian Miller from Alabama, Le'Veon Moss from Texas A&M, Jaden Blue from Texas. It's interesting, though, to see all those guys so far down the list. And, all 3 of those guys, Johnson and Gordon and Etienne, have had really, really good productive college careers.
Yeah. Caleb Johnson has 11 rushes of over 20 yards this season. So he's rushed for 685 yards in 4 games, 82 attempts, averaging 8.4 yards per carry. But those 11 carries of 20 yards or more have accounted for 397 of his yards. So on the other 71 carries, he's averaging just like 4 yards a carry. So if you can tackle him when the first time you hit him, there's a pretty good chance that you can stop him there. But he's a big back, and he can go the distance, as we've seen. He's got rushes of 64, 54, 40, 39, 37, 33, 33, 27, 26, 23, 21. So don't let him get started, kind of like Eddie George in that way. Don't let him get started, because it's going to be hard to stop him. But outside of those long runs, Mrs. Lincoln, 4 yards a carry. And then Iowa State, he rushed for like 187 yards or something like that. He's rushed for 100 yards in every single game and did not play the first half of the season opener. But in the fourth quarter against Iowa State, 11 carries, 17 yards. So they're going to rely on him heavily, and then his legs might get a little bit heavier as that game goes on. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then I said Ohio State winning on second down would be big. No, offensively, Ohio State winning on first down is huge in this game. Iowa against their two Power 4 opponents, because that's really all I'm looking at when I'm looking at what Iowa's done. They are 3 of 15 on third downs of 7 yards or longer in those two Power 4 games. So if you can keep them to 3rd and 7, you're pretty much golden.
Yeah, Iowa's one of those teams where we talk about success rate sometime, and success rate is 4 yards on first down and half of what you need to get on second down and then converting on third down. Iowa is one of those teams where success rate is maybe the single most important stat, because they don't hit big plays very often. They don't hit many big plays in the passing game. They don't have very many plays in the passing game at all. So if you can make them one-dimensional, every time the Ohio State rushman package is on the field because it's 3rd and 7, you can pretty much just go ahead and tell Brandon Inniss, why don't you tighten those gloves up? You're going to be out there in just a minute returning a punt. Because if Iowa has to try and make plays through the air, and it's a time when they have to be predictable in making plays through the air, that is really not going to go well. Iowa, if they can run for 7 yards on first down and get into a 2nd and 3, that's when, hey, you run a little play action bootleg and you hit the tight end coming out the backside of the formation, and you get a 20-yard gain there. That's how Iowa's going to be able to move the ball through the air, is stay ahead of the chain, stay on schedule, stay where where you're not in a predictable passing situation. That's going to be very, very important for them, because if they're not a good passing team, and if they're in a predictable passing spot, that makes good passing teams become not very good passing teams, and so it's going to make a not very good passing team be a disaster.
So they're mentioned 3 of 15 out 7 yards and beyond, 10 of 16, 6 yards and in. So as Tom was saying, if they can make it, that's a huge difference for Iowa, because they can either run it or complete those short passes. I did watch, I don't know if it was the Iowa State game or the Minnesota game, where Cade McNamara dropped back, looked like he put everything he had into it, lofted a back shoulder fade. It was about 20 yards downfield. And it just looked like he had to put as much in it as possible. And it was a looping pass. And it's like, that's the kind of pass that other quarterbacks are just zipping in there on those back shoulders. And that's what Ohio State's going to be facing this week. A quarterback that is very limited in what he can do downfield, which is probably why Kirk Ferentz is like, let's not do that downfield stuff. And as I mentioned in the bold prediction show, I saw him throw a Hail Mary that as far as he could, and it went 50 yards. So there's not a lot of downfield for them, but I still think they need to try to get some free yards, even if they end up just being 15-yard penalties. You need chunks, because they're going to need, I don't know, how many points does Iowa realistically need to win this? Is 27, can they hold Ohio State to 24? Is that the minimum that Ohio State is going to score in this one, 21, 24? Or?
Yeah, I think that the Iowa offense, I think maximum that I can see them scoring is 21. And so you needed probably a defensive score or something like that to get above 21. And holding the Ohio State offense to 20, something like that, 17 to 20, that's probably about as good as you can get. So you really need basically a maximized offensive performance and a maximized defensive performance. And then maybe you can sort of just, slide out the side door with a 21-20 kind of win, something like that. This is a game where you could see Ohio State losing. There's a way Ohio State turns the ball over 3 or 4 times, and Iowa gets some short fields and they kick some field goals, and they can keep the Ohio State offense off the field, and you have some empty possessions, and the Buckeyes start getting frustrated. You can see that happening. I can't see a scenario where Iowa scores more than 28 points unless they have multiple defensive touchdowns. It just feels like you're going to get, the best case scenario for Iowa is you get a couple first half turnovers, you maybe run one back for a touchdown. You get another one where you kick a field goal out of it. You get 10 points off of your turnovers in the first half. You're up 13-10 at half or something like that. And you just kind of do the same thing in the second half. And you force a couple turnovers. Ohio State has a bad drop or something like that. You run the ball, you control the clock, and you try and get out the door with, 23-20, something with just like, boy, that's a lot of field goals. That feels like that's the way that Iowa would have to win this game.
And Iowa's offense also can't turn the ball over and give Ohio State short fields. So that's going to be key as well. I went with, Tom, are you ready for my score prediction?
I am.
I went 35-10, which surprised me because I don't see Iowa scoring much. And I feel like there will be some short fields for the Buckeyes. But it's like a touchdown a quarter, and then one of those quarters is 2 touchdowns for Ohio State. And it's very much just a steady climb to a dominating performance. But I don't think it's ever going to look like amazing or Iowa's still involved, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah, I went with 31-13 Ohio State. And this just the vibes around this one are halftime score, Ohio State 17, Iowa 6. And everyone just kind of goes, oh, that was unsatisfying. But that's kind of, if you're up 17-6 on Iowa at halftime and you don't turn the ball over in the second half, congratulations, you've won the football game. So it feels like it's just going to be kind of an unsatisfying, kind of gross game where this is what it is. Like sometimes you just have to grind these games out. And this is one you're just going to have to grind out. And as long as you don't give it to Iowa, they don't really have the ability to take it from you. So just hang on to the football. Don't turn it over. If the game is even, if all I tell you is the game is even in terms of turnovers, is there a way that you think, boy, Iowa could win this game?
Well, I mean, not really. They would need crazy special teams like 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns or something like that. A lot of help, or the turnovers have directly led to points. But if they're even in turnovers, I don't, 9 out of 10 times that's going to be an Ohio State win, and that 10th time is going to be crazy.
Yeah, you're looking at a real kind of black swan event if you don't turn it over and you still lose. That would take, like you said, a kickoff return for a touchdown, a punt return for a touchdown, a bad snap that you lose 20 yards, and it's not a turnover, but it kills your drive, or holding penalties on 3 consecutive drives that kill drives. Like you really have to kind of work for it to not win in that case.
Yeah, for sure. So there you go. I think we have both predicted Ohio State to handle the Iowa Hawkeyes. It'll be fine. May not be the prettiest game, but if you just go in, don't expect pretty, then you can't be disappointed by what you end up seeing. So there you go. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up before you go. We would appreciate that if you have not done so already. Thank you if you have. Continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. Great way to support what we do. And I would say get ready for the game for Saturday. We will be on the air shortly before the game ends for our post-game show. We'll be live there for a couple of hours, recapping everything we saw, talking to coaches, talking to players. So find us at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Subscribe to the channel if you have not yet done so. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.